Never leave your planet without first packing your luggage. Here's your look at the NECA Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Utrom. This NECA Ultimate Utrom figure is based on the original Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic books from Mirage Studios. These robot exoskeletons look fierce, but the Utrons that are peaceful aliens who crashed on Earth and been hiding behind their shell corporation, TCRI. This 7-inch scale exoskeleton has removable Utron, includes interchangeable heads and hands, blaster tools, and is a sippy cup. Even tentacle aliens have to stay hydrated. Comes in an all-new special comic book themed window box packaging, illustrated by Kevin Eastman himself. Now, before we take a look at who's in the tummy, I'd like to first thank the folks over at NECA Toys. Yes, I would. They did provide this sample of the Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Utrom that we could have a look at in this review. Grabbing the old tape measure, as of course we always do here on this channel, the Utrom, technically the Utrom is only really the alien inside, but of course the exoskeleton as a whole is 6.5 inches in height, or it's going to be about 16.5 centimeters tall. Getting going with some size comparisons. First, let's bring in a turtle. In this case, I'll bring in Leonardo. This is Leonardo from the original NECA Mirage comic run 10 plus years ago. I do hope at some point we are going to get reissues of these figures for those that missed their chance before. Just recently, in fact, also here on this channel, we had a look at the Mirage-inspired Casey Jones. When having him, though, standing next to the exoskeleton, you can see that they're about the same sized figures. The figure of Utron does quite well for himself in accessories. The figure comes included with a series of interchangeable hands of varying grips. The figure comes included also with a blaster, 2 tools, a sippy cup, and a battle-damaged head sculpt. If you want to go to really a deep thought on this, Utron technically is the tiny little critter that sits inside the robot exoskeleton. You could then use the argument that the exoskeleton is just one big giant articulated accessory for the Utron sitting inside of it. Wow, that's deep. Anyways, the figure comes included with some gripping hands. We're not going to look at the gripping hands just yet. First, the figure comes included with some closed fists. I've already removed these from the forums. They're likely going to be going back in the tray. I'm never probably going to be using these, but it gives us a quick chance, a sneak peek, I should say, at some of the detail work that they've panel lined into each of the individual hands. And that's even until we start to get down to looking at the accessories of the figure. The figure also, like I said, comes included with gripping hands of different grips, different sizes, I should say, suitable for, again, holding the tools, the tiny little tools, the blaster, and again, the sippy cup. Now, looking at the hands, for example, just to bring these ones back in, and then eventually the hands we're going to be looking at the forearms, I didn't think that any of them really would be suitable enough for holding the sippy cup. Because if you look at the sippy cup, it's a pretty sized cup. There's no way that would be able to fit into the grip until you then realize that NECA made all the hands of a fairly soft plastic. And while though immediately looking at that and just assuming a write-off that there's no way to be able to fit a sippy cup, for example, until you start to widen the hands away from the grip, you then realize, yeah, it can easily hold the cup in hand. And of course, then you can bring the hand closer to the Utron and then you can have it sipping from the cup. I think that's a really nice touch. I'm glad to see that they actually used softer plastic and not a more hard, rigid plastic, because there's no way I'd be able to do that with a regular gripping hand. Just going to remove that for right now. The figure, like I said, also comes included with some tools. Let's have a look at those right now. The tools are different from one another, at least from shape. Color-wise, they're exactly the same. They're sort of more like a rusted red. I do like the detail work that they actually managed to put into the tiny little tools that the Utron exoskeleton can hold in his hands. The figure also comes included with a blaster. I like the look of this blaster quite a lot. The front of it almost looks like Lugnut from Transformers Animated. Does anybody else see that, perhaps? I like the way they've colored the inside of that, kind of more of a whiter, and then the outside of that is more of a kind of a glowing, pulsating yellow. It's a really neat looking blaster, though. Again, this can fit into either one of his hands. The hands themselves are fairly easy to remove. One thing I did notice, though, about the hands, I'm going to put this hand back in a second, but just removing one of the hands, I did notice that the peg that they used are fairly long. Man, I just kept feeling like I was twisting this forever, till eventually, yeah, you can see the very long peg that they ended up using. I guess that's a good thing, just though be careful when it comes to swapping out the hands. If there's resistance, obviously don't just yank it for the risk of potentially breaking the peg. The figure also, like I said, does come included with a battle damaged version of the exoskeleton head sculpt. Pick your poison as to which one you would rather display. I mean, I could probably see myself getting another couple of these Utrons and having them on display. Maybe a couple of them, for example, with the battle damaged head that has the sagging out socket of the eye, and then a couple of them a little bit more cleaner. I prefer the cleaner one if I only was to have one. If I had more than one, I would definitely swap it out then for the battle damaged head sculpt instead. You can see some real damage has been done to the top of the head. Again, you got the sagging little eye. Whoa, this guy's seen better days. But again, that can be then swapped out. I might just swap that out at the end of the video. Or do you guys want to see it now? Okay, we'll see it now. Let's just go ahead and remove the hand, or remove the head from the ball joint. This, if you have, by the way, any harder time to remove it from the ball joints, the best advice I could obviously make is just heating it up with hot water. Initially, I did heat it up with hot water, and I maybe didn't have the plan to remove it on camera. I had a little bit of time for the plastic then to cool again, but let's just heat it up again if you're having any issues to do this, and then just pop the head back in place. There we go. Again, like if I only had the chance to get one of these, I probably would just then default to the cleaner looking head sculpt myself. But again, I gotta say, like, that's a cool looking head that they decided to release also as well with the figure. I did already mention the fact that the Utrom is technically removable. Like Krang before, you simply just take the Utrom out. And you can see, like, inside the cavity, they did take the time to sculpt everything, paneling it nicely inside the body. And unlike Krang, where you would have, again, had to remove, like, the torso piece and able to get access to this, this simply is just a case where you just remove the Utrom from the front. The Utrom itself is a fairly soft plastic. It's got some really nice detailing done to it. You can see some, again, like the bright yellow eyes, tiny little pupils of black, and a row of teeth on the top and the bottom, handled well in white. It's a fairly, again, soft plastic. At least it's finished all the way around. It kind of looks like the bottom of it maybe is a part that they end up having to add extra, because again, like the outside seems like it's a more softer plastic. I think the inside is a little more of a harder plastic. But either way, it fits nicely, really without a lot of forcing either to fit that inside the cavity of the exoskeleton. Getting a closer look now with the battle damaged release, I do like the colors of the blue that they used here. A lighter, a medium blue, and kind of a darker gray that they've incorporated in there as well. Again, the panel lining looks fantastic on this figure. It really does give them the chance, the artist, the talented artist behind the scenes at NECA Studios, a chance to really go in there and showcase some of their skills. I mean, just the artwork, just the sculpting work that they put into this piece, and with all the darker grays and the darker panel lining of black, really allows for all the sculpting to shine through. Speaking of shining, though, you may also notice that there's a whole bunch of little shine marks across his tush, all down the side of his leg, and of course across his forearm and the front of his chest also there as well. I just dropped the Utrom while I was doing that. Let's pop that back in. Like, the Utrom stays fairly well in body. I mean, the moment you kind of start to move things around, it may be the time when the figure then falls out. But we're going to talk more about the articulation in a second. Again, some really nice detailing done down below here. Darker grays being, again, married nicely with the blues and the darker blues that they've used here as well. It's a really neat looking figure. For the articulation on this guy, here's again, like, when it comes to the articulation, you really got to be careful more so with the torso, because the torso, you can kind of see gets pretty close in quarters to the tiny little tentacles for the Utrom. But again, we're going to talk more about that right now. For the articulation, starting first with the head sculpt, it does rotate all the way around. It's on a ball joint again, after all. It does move kind of up. That's as far up as it really does go. It does look down a lot better, though. It also can rock back and forth also as well. For the shoulders are going to be a little bit more limited, simply just because, again, like, they're a lot blockier here to the top, that there's a lot less opportunity really for the arms to hinge out further past the point that I'm doing right now. You can, though, still rotate the arms all the way around. The figure does have a swivel, although it's cut right into the bicep. It's not like an individual joint. The figure does also have a single hinge in the elbow only. Hands rotate also all the way around via the peg. Now, when you get to the torso here, right in this section, just be careful again when you're rotating it. Even when you think you can clear it, the only thing I would be worried of is just rotating it and scraping the plastic against the, that would just imagine the headache that would cause. But you don't want to make some abrupt turns with the top of the torso, just because, again, like, I think that would start to scratch the top of the Utrom. And also a nice really chance to see as well, again, the detailing, all the panels, the panel lining of the tubes, and all the little levers and pulleys that would allow this robotic creature to start to move. The figure also does have a swivel down below at the waist area there also as well. But Again, it's a little kind of harder to do that just because the Utron's sitting inside the body. The legs do split. I didn't notice right away that the legs moved as well as they did until I, again, had to soften up the plastic just a little bit. But you can get almost as successful splits from the Utron's exoskeleton. Legs move forward. The legs also move back. There's a nice swivel at the top of the thigh. Also, in addition to that, the figure does have a single hinge in the knee. And while I did almost for a second think that there's a cut right there would allow the knee to rotate, I think it's actually just the way it's been sculpted into the leg. The feet also hinge up and down this way. There is a nice ankle pivot. And in case you are interested, yeah, there are peg holes in the undersides of the feet as well. This is a figure that I really feel myself wanting to get more than one of these, just because, again, like the work that they put into both the head sculpts. Defaulted back, I think I would have just, if I was to get only one of these guys, I would want to really display it with this head sculpt, because, again, I really like the way that this turned out. I also, though I didn't mention earlier, I like the way they've kind of got the eye glowing. Can you kind of see the way they've airbrushed a little bit of the yellow around the socket of the eye? It really gives a nice little illumination to the face. But I think, again, if I was to get only one of these figures, I would lean more towards displaying him with this head sculpt. But then to get more than one, which I think I'm really leaning more towards, I could definitely see myself getting multiple versions of the Utrom exoskeleton and having him displayed in different types of damage. Although, to be fair, the damage is really only central around the head sculpt. It would have been nice if they could have found the means to maybe have the hands, for example, or the forearms be removable, where you could pop those off, for example, and replace them with battle damaged instead. But again, I really like how this one did turn out. If you are a fan of the Utrom, especially the way it looks in the Mirage comics, it's definitely a good figure to be picking up for your collection. While the Utrom doesn't really resemble the Krang that we know and love from the original 80s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon series, you can certainly see the early building blocks, those blueprints that would be in place as the Utroms were predominantly featured in the original Mirage comic run. These exoskeletons would then, of course, contain the tiny little brain aliens sitting inside their stomach cavity. And again, you can kind of see then that would translate eventually to a more user-friendly, a little more family-friendly version of Krang that, again, we got in the cartoon series. I always liked the look of the Utrons, and I love the idea that when it came to translating this to a plastic figure, NECA went all out once again to include accessories along with the figure, down to the fact that the figure even includes a sippy cup. It might be the only time we've gotten a NECA figure. Now, somebody could correct me very well in the comment section. I think it's the only time we've gotten ourselves a sippy cup to come include with a NECA figure. And he also comes included, like I said, with the blaster, which I have in his hand right now, a couple of tools, and not to mention a swappable head sculpt, which I just, again, decided to keep the battle damage head on, at least for the final looks for the figure. For me, at least, I'm going to default back to the more cleaner looking head, but I could definitely really see myself getting another couple of these. Maybe one. I don't want to go too crazy on this. Before I know it, my whole shelf space will be overrun with exoskeletons, not endoskeletons, that's Terminators, exoskeleton releases of Utrons of varying different damages. Yes, the damage is only really centralized around the head sculpt. Again, I kind of wish that they could have included some of the more damaged parts, maybe for its arms, for example, so you would have a little more customization to it. But all in all, head to toe, including the tummy tum creature, a nice looking Utrom from the folks over at NECA Toys. What do you guys think of Utrom? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you picked up this figure? And a better question to ask, if you have picked them up, how many have you picked up? You can come clean. I mean, it's only just us. We're all friends. We're all kind of keep your secrets. You have 100? Okay, that's maybe too much. But what do you guys think? Have you guys picked up more than one Utrom? I could see myself maybe, again, picking one more. We're going to stop it right there because we don't want to get too crazy when it comes to collecting these in army building size. Big thank you once again to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the Mirage-inspired Utrom that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly on board to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. Just a little tiny birdie, by the way, sitting on your shoulder, maybe whispering in your ear. Yeah, birdies know how to talk English. There will be more videos coming your way from the folks over at NECA Toys. Chirp, chirp, chirp. So definitely make sure you're coming back here on a regular basis. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.